Hey everybody, this is the final presentation for my Kansas City Regional Crash Injury Analysis for our CIS610 capstone. This work was framed as a safety decision support report for the Missouri Department of Transportation using crash records from Kansas City area from Highway Patrol crash records. And we'll briefly cover the problem, the methods, and the major findings. And then how this could actually be used to support operations. And then we'll close with limitations, future possibilities for the work. Then we'll talk about the hardest and most interesting stuff in the class. So thank you guys for watching. The operational problem was pretty straightforward. MoDOT obviously has to prioritize safety review in the way the traffic is planned. And the way they strategically place roundabouts, streetlights, different yields, things like that to try to prevent injury. And so where and when we can focus engineering follow-ups, monitoring, coordination, working with limited resources, obviously. We're working with taxpayer dollars. And so just trying to do the best that we can using all the records and all the analysis that we can available to try to protect the traveling public. Crash records are collected every year, but the challenge is converting those records into something structured, actual insight that we can use to try to turn around and actually put into action. So the objective here was to take the crash data from the Kansas City region using the 4 counties, Cass, Clay, Jackson, and Platte, and try to produce a clear set of findings and decision support outputs, including small defensible predictive component to try to forecast that injury analysis to try to just try to alleviate that and mitigate that along the way. For the methodology here, the workflow is pretty simple, but we did have a decent pipeline. First, we used Python for data preparation. We consolidated all of our crash records into a structured data set. The crash records you get from Highway Patrol are a little difficult to work with, so you got to do a little bit of data manipulation to be able to pull that out and actually build a table data set to be able to do that analysis on that data. And so once we did that, and we provided analysis ready fields. We were able to create fields like hour of the day, numeric age, injury indicators, things that the engineers actually be able to use. And then second after that, we ran descriptive analytics, when crashes cluster as far as time of day, where injury associated records repeat, what areas have the most of number of crashes, number of injuries, and then how counts are distributed across the counties. Then third, we implemented a logistic regression classifier as a transparent predictive component to test whether injury outcomes show measurable signal in the available structured features. I'm just trying to see what we're actually able to predict out of there. And then finally, we used Tableau to communicate results through 3 core visuals and an integrated dashboard intended to kind of speak for itself if it were to be briefed to executives, just to provide that high level view of what our analysis found. The first major finding that we had was temporal clustering, clustering the crashes injury reports by time of day. The crash records peaked in the late afternoon, with the highest hour being 1600, so 4 o'clock in the afternoon, followed closely by 1500, so right in that 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock time frame, leading into 5 o'clock. So kind of like what you would expect to see, especially in the area of Kansas City. Between 3 and 6 o'clock seemed to be the highest number of window for accidents and for crashes, accounting for about 29% of all the records. Operationally, this supports prioritization of the idea that if MoDOT or other agencies are deciding when to emphasize monitoring, messaging, or review, late afternoon would be a defensible time window to start with. So if we were looking to make changes to just kind of mitigate some of those crashes or some of the injuries, or try to loosen up congestion, this would be the time frame that we're looking to do that. First would be that 3 o'clock to 6 o'clock in the evening time frame. The second key finding that we had was just a recurrence in injury associated locations. So we were trying to figure out, where do the injuries happen the most? Is it just a time of day thing because there's more people out there, or are there certain areas that happen to have more crashes than others? So when filtering to the injury-related records and ranking crash locations by count, we came up with a short list of roadways that we seem to see a lot. The crash records aren't always able to narrow it down to a specific intersection. Sometimes it's just a mile marker on a road. So there are maybe larger segments that we would be able to kind of compartmentalize this a little better. But we just went with the labels actually set in the crash records, and we were still able to find many repeat locations. It doesn't prove causation, and it's not exposure normalized, but it does at least provide a defensible triage mechanism if you had to brief this to higher. In other words, these are candidate corridors to follow up with. So for engineering reviews, signage and visibility checks, signal timing evaluation, or just deeper crash narrative review, depending on what else you're looking for, this would definitely be a top 10 places that we'd be able to start kind of analyzing what we might be able to do to mitigate some of those crashes and some of those injuries. And here we paired the county distribution with the predictive results. And so the county counts show where the records actually concentrate across Cass, Clay, Jackson, and Platte counties, the 4 counties in the Kansas City district. And these are volume-based counts, not exposure normalized rates. So just the amount of volume, number of times that they showed up within the records. But they do help frame regional coordination for our analysis. On the predictive side, we used a class-weighted logistic regression model with hour and county, person type, and then age as predictors. I'm just trying to determine where we were able to just narrow down on maybe not causation, but just what's related to these crashes. So is it older people, younger people? Does it depend on the county? Maybe it's a neighborhood, or just that hour of the day is a rush hour. The model that we used achieved 0.5989 accuracy with a weighted F1 of 0.61. Injury precision was high at 0.81, but injury recall was moderate at 0.52 with 60 false negatives. The appropriate operational framing, that this isn't an automated injury detector, but it can provide supplemental prioritization signal to help rank or flag records for review when combined with engineering judgment. So it's obviously not going to be foolproof to be able to predict all injuries based on any of those categories, but it is at least a predictive analysis to kind of give us just an idea whether, like we said, be a county thing or possibly a person type or an age thing, or just if it is just limited just to that hour of the day. We took our figures and we consolidated them into a Tableau dashboard to kind of view it through 3 analytical lenses for a single just interface that you'd be able to use to if you're briefing higher levels. So the intent was for the dashboard to kind of speak for itself. So we went with what we've kind of briefed here, the records of the day, the crash locations, then the injury records broken down by the county. So we were able to show when crashes were clustering, our injury associated corridors, our repeat offenders, as far as locations, not people, and then how the records distributed across the counties. In a real world setting, this kind of dashboard would be able to support recurring safety review meetings by giving leadership a consistent snapshot, what's changing, what needs follow-up, have the changes that we've implemented actually made impact out on the roadways for the traveling public. So this dashboard kind of gives them essentially a one-stop shop, just so they can get that kind of high-level view on what's taking place over a specific period of time. We close here with our practical takeaways, our actionable uses here. First, in the late afternoon window, that 3 o'clock to 6 o'clock time frame, that time frame contained nearly 1/3 of all the crashes in the data set. So that would prioritize or support prioritizing the monitoring and review during that window to assess if there were changes that could be implemented. And then second, the injury associated corridor ranking provides a defensible short list for engineering follow-up. So now we have a time of day where we're able to kind of narrow down on where those crashes, where we may need to make some changes, and then we can further dive into that, further drill that down with the injury analysis or location analysis based on our injury associated crashes. Again, not proof of causation, but just a triage mechanism just to get an idea of what the best places to start would be. And then third, the county distribution supports regional coordination rather than just an isolated review. So maybe not just the Kansas City district, but now you can stretch out into county resources as well, and possibly utilize some of those in our efforts to mitigate some of these injury-related crashes. Um, in terms of limitations, the analysis was constrained by text-based locations. We didn't have GPS coordinates to know exact locations of the injuries. We just had to rely on, like we said before, kind of highways, roadways, mile markers. Sometimes you get an intersection, but not often. And there was no exposure normalization, and then we were also working with the limited predictor set for modeling. Then reflection, just for the hardest part of the course. I thought it was turning the static crash records into a clean analysis ready data set. Like I said, I had to download the PDFs and then work them through several processes to be able to extract that data and get that into Excel, so I was actually able to use that for a data set to provide that analysis. Then the most interesting part was watching the same time windows and corridors just kind of repeatedly pop up in the results. We had a small data set, really, when you think about it, but we had, like I said, a lot of repeat locations, and then a lot of things in that same kind of rush hour window. But it was a fun project, and it was relatable. Working for Department of Transportation myself, this is kind of something that we look at and think about anyway. So it was fun to kind of break it down and be able to use that in the classroom setting, and then still see how we might be able to actually take this and then provide that analysis, or at least direction of analysis to our higher ups. So I appreciate all you guys watching. I appreciate all the feedback, and thank you guys for just all your insights and all your input throughout the 8 weeks of this course. And good luck to everybody in the future. So thank you guys.